Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a paid advertising. TheOnlyGround.com, onlyground.com is one of the most amazing places for information that I consistently go to. If you guys want to have conversations about our old interviews or even topics that we don't discuss, the group of people that are on the onlyground.com message boards are some of the most brilliant that I have ever come across. Those little like knick-knack facts that we get here and there, that's where a lot of it comes from. Please check out the link in the bio.
Welcome to the Lights Out Podcast. This is Chris Lights Out Lyles, and this is our journey to document the history of mixed martial arts. I have brought with me my friend, the MMA detective Mike Davis, and together we will preserve the history and hear some great stories from the world in the era of the no-holds-barred. Thank you and enjoy.
This is a Lights Out Podcast. First, we have a reigning current champion as our guest, Chris Camozzi, the pride of Colorado, recently had his hand raised against Sawyer Depee. Welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thank you. I like that intro.
Dude, it's true, man. Like, if you look at your career, like it's a bring your lunch to work type career. Like you're not a guy that was given much, yet you had to earn everything. And to have a championship title, that asterisk of world champion, on your Wikipedia, I think it's very fitting.
Hey, I appreciate that. Yeah, it feels good.
Let's talk, before we kind of get into the questions, Sawyer Depee, obviously a very tough opponent. Not a lot of hand speed, but man, does he hit hard. Did this fight play out the way you had thought?
Actually, perfectly and exactly. You're right. So it's weird because I've never been knocked out. I've never been hurt from strikes in my entire career. I think it's like 56. I don't even know how many fights anymore, but it's in the 50s. But still, each time I fight a hitter, I'm like, man, what if this is the one? What if this is the one? But I need those like nerves to, I need to put that in my own head because I think it makes me sharper, if that makes any sense, If I'm just like, oh, whatever, I've got way more fights than this guy or that guy and more experience. I've been around the world, all the like accolades. If I let that play in, I feel like that will be my detriment. That'll be the downfall. So no matter who I fight, whether it's if you get a 1-0 guy that I'm fighting, I'm going to find a way to worry about it because that drives me. But yeah, the answer to your question is it played out exactly how I planned. I mean, I didn't get hit, won the world title, and I can tell you I had specific conversations. I haven't even gone through the videos yet of warming up in the locker room, but I was specifically warming up to like counter with an uppercut, follow up with the hook. I'll put it out.
I'd say like when you cracked him and you connected, Depee went like a different way. Like it looked strange the way he went down. And then when he got up, you saw like his nose, like it was already beat up anyway, but like there was no hiding that he got cracked hard.
Yeah. And I gotta say, we've talked about this before we started recording, but what really pisses me off is people that come out and say, I saw some comments that were like, oh, it's rigged, it's fake, everything. Like, first off, how are you gonna fake a nose break? Two, you've never been in there. You've obviously never been punched. Did I knock him out cold? I don't think so. I thought I did at first, but after watching it back, he reacted to the pain and the break. I don't know if his orbital broke too. He had told me maybe because, I'm a nice guy, man. You know that. He came out partying with me after. So he came to the bar with us. He came to Tom's Watch Bar right out. He was there before me. Busted nose and everything. Super nice guy. I got to meet his family, everybody. But I mean, that guy is a banger. He's a hitter. So anybody that says that he faked it or anything like that, it pisses me off and it makes me want to punch you in the face. Like,
Here, when you connected, did you know that he wasn't getting back up?
Yeah. As soon as I landed that, I knew that, well, I don't want to say I knew, but right when I walked off, I was like 99.9% chance that guy's not getting up. And I was trying to control my emotions because we've seen guys in the past that, because you get an adrenaline dump when you think it's over. There's been numerous fighters over history that get hyped, think it's over, guy gets up, but then they have this whole adrenaline dump and can't like refocus. So I remember thinking to myself, like, it's not over till it's over. It's not over till it's over. I put my hand in the air and I walked off. Um, but I kept telling myself, like, keep it together. Because if he gets up, I mean, you take like a cornered animal, hurt animal. Like, I fight better when I'm hurt. Every time I've ever been hurt is some of the best I've ever fought. So I had to like keep that in mind. Like, until till you see this is the best motion you can see.
Yeah.
Because then it's over.
Yeah, I think just the sheer force of it too, and like his face was broken. Like
Yeah.
there's no like faking that. Like his face broke, and
Yeah.
anybody pretending like, Chris, you just broke his face. I mean, he should have got up and kept fighting. I mean, like
Yeah. That's all
so
the internet guys are like, oh, he turned his head the opposite way of the punch. It's like, let me hit you in the face. We'll see how you react to the pain.
yeah,
If it doesn't put you out.
yeah. All right, so your career is actually incredibly interesting. Some of the like footnotes that I got, for people at home keeping score. Chael Sonnen, he flew you to Oregon to be a part of his camp in his rematch with Anderson Silva. True or false?
True. I was with him for a couple camps, I believe.
Okay. What was it like training up there with Team Quest?
It was great. I mean, Chael, I totally out him, but I feel like the secret's out now because that was back when he was like the real like villain. And if you want to rewind it going back, I kind of hated him before I ever knew him. I was like, can't stand this guy, like his spiel, his shit talk and everything. I He sold me basically. He got me because I thought it was all real. And then fast forward to meeting him, and I was like, this guy is the most polite, nice guy ever. So that's what I mean by I don't want to out him, but he is genuinely one of the most well-mannered, polite people I've ever met. So when I went out to train with him, each time I would go there, I would stay at his house. So I'd live with him. He'd put me up, him and his wife. Um, his mom was always around. Like his mom went to every practice with us. His mom would like take care of his fan mail. Um, you don't hear him. You don't hear him swear at all. You very respectful.
He's Mormon, correct?
I don't think so.
He grew up in like around the Mormons, from what I understand.
Oh,
He went to BYU.
No, he went to Oregon.
Did he go to Oregon? I thought he wrestled with Mark Schultz down at BYU. I thought that's where they met.
Shit, I don't think so. To my knowledge, he went to Oregon. I thought he wrestled at Oregon. But I mean, I can't say nicer things. I mean, every time I went out there, everything, he's like, dinner's on me. This is my town. I use that comment now when people come visit my town. But at one point it was me, him, Yushin Okami, Brian Stan, um, just an all around cool guy. And I think that now the spiel for the most part's over, so I'm not really outing him. But
Yeah.
and I will tell you one thing that I found amazing is that he remembers everybody's name. If you meet him, like Mike, I don't know if you met him, but if you ran into him, you might be surprised. You might be like, "Hey, Mike, good to see you." He's real intelligent. He's got a psychology degree from Oregon, from as far as I know.
Yeah. So how does that bridge get built between you and Chael?
So that's a funny one too. So it was actually this is a great podcast story. So rewind. I fought Dustin Jacoby, UFC on Fox 2 in Chicago, and Chael was there fighting. Bisping.
Bisping. Yeah, I was there.
Yeah.
Dude, your finger came out in that fight.
Yeah.
I saw that. I was like sixth row, and I'm like, oh my god, his fingers out. But go ahead.
Yeah.
So he fought Bisping. You meet in Chicago.
I forgot. Yeah, you're a Chicago guy.
Yeah,
Um, that was at the United Center?
I think it was Allstate. Is it? It was United Center. It
Yeah,
was.
it was the United Center.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, so I'm there cutting weight and Chael's in there a few days before weigh-ins. Right when we walked in, like I said, nicest guy ever. He's sitting there cutting weight right when we walked in, me and my coaches and team, just to cut like a little bit of weight. You're doing the up and down throughout the week. He was like, "Hey guys, how's it going?" But you could see he was like suffering in there already, but he like brought it together just to say hi. Um, so we got to talking. We were there for hour and a half in the sauna, in and out. Because I used to cut real hard to make 185. So, and so did Chael. Anyways, he's just like, yeah, looking forward to your fight, yada, yada, yada. Fast forward to fight night. He was in my locker room, but Dustin and I were the last unaired prelim of the UFC. So there's a history thing that you don't have to be that proud of because you're the last unaired one ever. But anyways, I fight, I win. I'm in the locker room. I showered up and everything, and Chael comes in because I think he was co-main event. And he was like, "Hey, Chris, I got a weird question for you." I was like, "Yeah, what's up?" And he was like, "I didn't bring a cup." He's like, "Can I borrow your cup?" And I was like, "I'll do you one even better. You don't have to borrow it. I own a fight store. I used to own a retail store called Performance MMA. I was like, I don't want it back. You can have it. I will give it to you."
It's your.
Yeah,
is this
it's
the
yours.
memorabilia? He's a memorabilia collector, and he wanted your cup. Is that what, did you sign it?
Right? He's literally there at the venue. He's probably an hour from fighting, and he's like, "I didn't bring a cup, man. I just looked." Come to find out, after knowing him, it happens all the time. His last boxing match with Anderson, he texted me the day before leaving for Brazil and asked me if I knew where to get a cup because he never wears one, didn't have one, and it was for boxing. So he was looking for like the groin protector. I mean, day before leaving for Rio, and I was like, man, I don't know about Oregon, but they're pretty hard to find around here. Anyways, I let him borrow my cup, or not borrow, never took it back. He did try to return it. After the fight, he came back and he's like, "Here you go." And I was like, "Nope, it's all you. I'll get a new one. Don't worry about it." So I gave him a steel Fairtex cup, I think it was. But after that, we excuse me. After that, we talked a little bit, but then fast forward, it was him fighting Anderson Silva, and I was a lefty. I'm kind of close to the same height as Anderson and all that, and reached out and just seeing if I wanted to come to Oregon and do camps with him. So yeah, from there, the rest is history, but all around great guy.
So you're like one of those guys where you meet Chris Camozzi one time and you walk away going, "That's a good guy. That's a good guy." And a lot of people have that. Like Chris Weidman is another guy that used to bring you out to his camps.
Yeah.
So how did you connect with Chris?
Oh, I thought I lost you. You froze there for a second. You're just good at holding the pose. Weidman, same kind of thing, right? So, man, Anderson Silva, I owe him for all these friendships. Because I'm a lefty, right? So southpaws are a lot harder to find, even though Sawyer, who I just fought southpaw, half the guys I've fought now actually for BKFC were all southpaw. But I got that tall build, and then at 185, when guys would fight Anderson, it would come up. But Weidman, I was in Rio. I was fighting Louise Kane, I think it was. Yeah, in Rio, Weidman is gearing up to fight Anderson Silva. And I'm walking through the hotel. I see Chris Weidman. Obviously, I know who he is. The UFC is already promoting it. That's why they brought him out there. He's the guy that's going to dethrone Anderson. Chris and I can't remember how we started talking. I think just in the lobby. And he was like, "Hey, I came out here. My buddy bailed literally today on the way here, who was supposed to come with me. So he came by himself." He's like, "Would you mind if I got lunch with like you and your coaches? You're the only Americans here I've seen." And he's like, "All of Brazil literally fucking hates me right now." So I was like, yeah, man, of course. Like, come with us, you know. So we ate lunch, and then I had set up a seminar in Rio for children's foundation, like an orphanage in the favelas there in Rio. And I was going to donate a portion of my purse. And then the UFC found out, and then they wanted to get on board. So it ended up being a seminar with me, Weidman, Machida, Jose Aldo, Henna Barao, Shogun. It was cool. So we got driven in like armored cars to the favelas to this compound that was like a children's orphanage. Then we did the seminar, but Weidman and I had to wear earpieces the whole time that translated because um, it was literally like a box you clipped on like a microphone, but it translated Portuguese to English so you could understand what people were saying. It must be what they use at the UN or something. But him and I basically were the only people there, Americans. It just looked like we were at the DMV, not knowing what's going on, like looking around. um, and then from there, fast forward, he was just like, you know, I could use a lefty. I don't have any lefties in my training camp. Started going out there and cross training, and he became one of my really good friends too.
Yeah, he's I've never met him, but he's got one of those personalities that's like easily adaptable to whatever room he goes into.
Yeah, I mean, so I got to say, Weidman, man, I sometimes, well, I don't feel bad for him. He's got a great life and great career and everything, but I don't feel like he ever got the respect that was due. You know, he beat Anderson 2 times. Both times people said he was lucky. You know, the first one they said Anderson was playing around and got knocked out, still got knocked out. Second time his leg broke. People were like, oh, he got lucky again. Every fight Weidman had, people found a reason to not give him the credit due. And then now, you know, he still gets a lot of hate. It's just like, I don't understand it. He's literally the all-American guy, beautiful family, great people. But for some reason, I feel like, to me, he never got his due of like respect, but he will go down as one of the best middleweights to ever do it, in my opinion.
All right. So from what I was able to track with your career, you helped Weidman with 5 fights. Vitor Belfort, Luke Rockhold, Yoel Romero, Gegard Mousasi, and Kevin Gastelum. Am I missing any?
I don't think so. I honestly don't remember who he was fighting, but I always enjoyed going out there. You know, Ray Longo, Matt Serra, all those guys in New York. A while back after I got divorced, I almost thought about moving to New York because I get along with all those guys so much. You know, I love it out there. I think Ray Longo is also one of the best coaches out there. Same with Matt Serra. They have such a cool group of guys. I can specifically remember Matt Serra. One thing he said to me that like resonated, and I still use it today. I first went out there. Matt Serra he's very forward but funny, and he was like,
Italian. It's Italian. Yeah,
yeah, and so am I. So that
yeah,
I guess that helps. But Serra was like, listen, Camozzi. He's like, the first time I went, I was there for like 4 days. It was like a trial period just to see if it would work. He's like, listen, we like you. He's like, it's weird because we're not looking for outsiders. He's like, I don't need any more friends. We need more enemies here. He's like, I can train any kid here on the block to be champion because there's so many killers here in New York, but you seem to fit in, so you're always welcome here. It was a really nice thing, but I was like, man, that's pretty like savage. He's like, I don't need any more friends. We need more enemies.
If you look at their champions, they're all homegrown.
Yeah, all of them. They all literally grew up like right there.
And it's because they're New York, it's Serra, it's Longo, and you see them in the UFC so much, you automatically think, oh, it's a travel gym. It's a destination gym. They're big game hunters. Dude, they're not.
No, they don't like recruit people. I've been to plenty of gyms where they're like reaching out, recruiting, like, oh, if you want to train, come here. They don't really invite very many people. And he's right, because there are so many killers just in that area. So when I used to go out, I would either stay with like John Vellante or Aljamain, Ali Quinta, and Dennis Bazooka all live together in one house. So I would stay with them. Talk about the toughest house on the block.
Yeah. You know, getting HOA disputes with them.
Yeah.
All right, Luke Rockhold. You were with Weidman when he was going to fight Luke Rockhold. There was a rumor that Weidman went into that fight with a broken foot.
Man, I don't fully remember. I couldn't say honestly.
Okay.
I'm not keeping it to myself, but I think
Yeah.
if I can remember right, I feel like that is true. He was battling some real injuries. So if you remember, Weidman fought or was supposed to fight Rockhold twice.
Yeah.
The first time the fight ended up being postponed. And I can verify that Weidman, that was when he had neck surgery. It was when him and I were sparring. Um, I'm not saying I did it. I'm saying, but his neck
Yeah.
got messed up. He still finished the training session, but then ended up going to the doctor the next day and then found out that like he had snapped a vertebrae or something crazy. The dude is tough as fuck. He's got a ton of injuries, but when I tell you we stopped for a second because there was a neck issue, and then he was like, whatever, it'll be fine. And I think we sparred like 5 more rounds. Then the following day, he went to the doctor and he was like, I think it was a broken vertebrae. So he ended
Holy
up pulling out of
shit.
that fight. Yeah, he ended up pulling out of that fight. And I remember apologizing. I was like, I don't know if it's anything I did, but I felt terrible. And then when he lost the fight to Luke, I had like a ton of like guilt because I was like, man, did I like ruin the trajectory to this or whatever? He got hurt when we were training. But they thought it was a lot from wrestling and stuff like that. I'm not saying I did it, but
No, it's just wear. It could be wear and tear. You know.
literally. I mean, the guy's been wrestling his entire life. Wrestling, as you know, is brutal on your
Awesome.
body.
Yeah.
Awesome, but also brutal on your body.
Yeah.
So yeah. But I do, now that you say that, I feel like I do remember he did have a foot injury, but I can't remember for sure.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about the beginning. So you're in Colorado, and if you look at like UFC contracts, I was told, and I don't know if this is true or not, I can't verify, but there's 300 athletes or right around 300 athletes living in Colorado that are under UFC contract.
Right now?
Denver in particular.
I don't
Maybe
think so.
living, traveling. No?
I think that would be pretty high. I think, I mean, now it's getting to be more and more, but I would say I know almost all of them and could name quite a few of them. But you're right. Back in the day, like when I was in the UFC, there wasn't many. I think there was 5. Um, there's quite a few, but I wouldn't say 300 at all.
Okay. So, in my opinion, Denver is probably the number one city in the entire country, city, not state, in regards to contracted UFC fighters.
I would say that's close.
Where else are you going to go? I mean, Coconut Creek, okay, that's cool, but that's one city. That's one gym, one city. You guys have got like 5 major gyms or 6 major gyms, all of them flush with UFC talent.
Yeah. And the crazy thing and the very cool thing about Colorado is most of them train together. They cross train, right? You go to other states, they don't. You go to Florida, American Top Team, and what's the gym called now? Killcliff. They
Killcliff,
don't.
yeah.
They don't intermingle. In Colorado, who was that? I want to say it was Cody Donovan or somebody else said it's Colorado against the world. So any day that I go to Genesis, there might be like Neil Magny, Drew Dober, other people. Raquel Pennington will come in and train with Rose. Everybody helps each other because we're not trying to be the regional best. We're trying to be the world best. So I will say outside of Factory X, so Factory X doesn't cross train with anybody. But the rest of the gyms in Colorado all work together.
Your original trainer was Brad Gumm.
Yeah.
So Brad's record, I think it's like 10-6-1. He's got under 20 fights. And he's 1-1 against Joe Stevenson. He's got a win over Brian Dunn and a win over Brad Blackburn. Like, if you subtract his last 5 fights, 4 losses and a draw, dude's like 10-1-1.
Yeah. He fought Carlos Condit back in the day. He fought who else? There was quite a few. Shoney Carter, I think is who he made his UFC debut against.
He lost a decision to Shoney Carter, which at that time speaks volumes. So Brad Gumm is kind of like one of these MMA mysteries. I don't even know where he's at. Like, I've tried to find this guy probably a dozen times.
Yeah, I would say he's still a mystery. Um, I love Brad, man. I wish I could run into him again. Um, to be honest, back then he was one of my probably best friends. And I think, I don't know, I'm only speculating here, but I think going back, it was right about when I got in the UFC. He was real burned out. He'd been training forever. He was fighting on like the Boss Root and Invitationals back in the day, where there were no weight classes or anything. He told me he had fights that he won that he doesn't remember even fighting in. Just a different era, right? So right about the time I came back from the Ultimate Fighter, I fought on the finale. He cornered me on that, and then after that, I came to him with my next fight, and he was starting to back out of the sport a bit. Um, so then I had a fight lined up, felt like I needed to move on. He told me like, so back then we had a 1,500 square foot gym, I think. It was just a room. There was 3 bags in it, and then otherwise it was a mat. Came in, told him my next fight, and he was like, "Yeah, man, what are we gonna do for training for you? I don't have anybody here that can help you get ready for that. Um, I think you should start looking at other teams," which I respect a lot because he
Oh,
was
he's
looking out for
upfront
my
with it.
well.
Yeah, he's looking out for you, right?
Yeah, and if I could go back, man, I wish I could bring him with me. He was always cool about me cross training. He always used to pay his own way. My entire career coming up, he didn't charge me any money, so it's not like he was getting money off me. Um, he used to tell me, he's like, "Hey, I remember it sucked making money. You don't make that much, and then you have to pay out your coaches, all these people." He's like, "My gym is doing good, but I'm doing well. Don't worry about it." He'd buy his own food, his own room, everything. Great guy, fucking great guy. But I think he was on his way out of sports. So like Brandon Royval started there with us when he was 13 or 14. There was some good guys that came out of there. I'm trying to think who else. Chase Hackett fought on the Ultimate Fighter. Nick Macias fought on the regional scene for a long time. Back then, we had a really solid team. Cerrone used to come in there. Um, let's see. There were so many.
Jimmy Soland,
Soyland, yeah,
Soyland, he was there too, right?
yeah. He went to school of mines. He's an engineer now, doing real well. So, um,
Well,
God,
Brad Gumm. Wait here, Brad Gumm. I don't know anything about the guy, but I was told he was kind of like the original flat earther.
yeah. I mean, I would believe that. I don't know if it was flat earther, but
He's that
I would
type,
say
though. Would you say he's that type?
very like anarchist,
Okay.
conspiracy theorist, everything. But yeah, unfortunately, he ended up kind of disappearing. Like Brandon Roybal still doesn't know what happened to him. All the guys that we came up with, he just up and left one day, closed the gym, sold everything, and never returned.
Is he like living in the woods?
Yeah, he always had a house in the mountains. And they, I never been to their house, even though we hung out for 5 or 6 years. Um, him and his wife just were always very like off the grid people. I don't even know if they had internet at the house. Um, yeah, I do miss him. I would love to see him again. But yeah, I have no idea. Like I said, or like you said, it's a total mystery.
He really was one of the founding fathers of the Colorado scene, the Denver, Colorado scene.
Absolutely. Him and Dwayne Ludwig, I would say. So Brad used to so like at his gym, Boss Rutan would come through there back when Boss was like heavyweight champion. Brad told me that was the first time he learned inside heel hooks was from Boss Rutan popping both of his knees one day because he didn't think that it would work. Babalu used to come train there. There was a lot of people that would come to town, and it's a really cool like historical thing. But I would say that he was one of the first people to start putting MMA together back then in Colorado, which is one thing he used to tell me. He's like, what used to drive me nuts? It's like I'd have my coaches corner me, and I have my kickboxing coach wondering why I'm wrestling around on the ground, or my jiu-jitsu coach not understanding about punches and asking why I'm not like gripping this or that. And he's like, none of these motherfuckers knew about like actually fighting MMA. So it used to piss me off when they were telling me instructions, but they didn't take into account the other parts.
So Did he also train professional like protesters?
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, and like he was like really into it. Like the you know, I don't want to get flagged on YouTube, but let's just say them being, big government. He's one of
Yeah.
those guys, right?
I remember the Democratic National Convention was in Denver, and there were some people coming in that I was like, "Who's that guy? Who's you know?" Didn't look like they wanted to train, and yeah, that's funny. Where did you find this?
Dude, I do psychotic research. But it's like I just want to recklessly learn heel hooks and knee bars. You know what I mean? It's just like,
No, you don't.
okay, there's nothing weird here. Come on in, come and train.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, him and his wife, I would say, were very big like activists. Um,
I
back
respect
then,
it, dude. They believed in it. And his wife, no slouch, 2-1, Alicia Gumm. She's got to win over Michelle Watterson.
yeah, she was a savage.
Dude.
His wife was a great fighter. Yeah, I think I cornered her on that fight for Michelle. But she had gotten like her nose broken and everything, and then did she win a decision or submit her? I can't even remember anymore.
I
But
Yeah, it just says win. Yeah, I couldn't find it.
yeah, I don't think back then they even kept track of how you won. You just won.
Yeah. So your first fight, February 2006, Kickdown Classic, Damon Daniels. That's your
Yeah,
first. Is that your first fight on record? Was there anything prior to that, or is this it?
in the ring. No, that was
Yeah.
the first one. That was
Okay.
the
So
first organized one.
all right, let's rewind that. So prior to Chris's fight career, as big as TikTok is right now, we used to have a service called Live League. And the first time I ever got to see you
I
fight
remember.
was you beating people up like in your backyard with boxing gloves on with like your buddies.
Oh man, yeah. I was always into it. So my brother and I, like growing up, God, I don't know what my parents were thinking, but at one point when we were like young kids, we had a trampoline in the backyard, and then they're like, "Here's some boxing gloves." And I'm 5 years older than Brian too, so it wasn't so much of a fight. It was more me getting to do
One
it.
sided ass kicking. Right.
Yeah, I remember telling Brian back then, like, let me see how high you can jump on the trampoline. And then like once he would like get the bounce going, like kicking his feet as hard as I could and watching him like flip, or let me see how hard I could punch you, and he would let me do it. Um, some of those things you look back and you feel bad about. You're like, man, what a terrible person. Um, but no, like I was just always like a rough and tough kid for the most part, like always looking for something mischievous to do, and I
You
don't
used to
know.
get a shitload of views on your Live League videos.
Really, I'll have to go back and see if I can find those. Send them to me if you know.
Yeah, yeah, you had a shitload of views, and it was just like that was like my first introduction to Chris Camozzi was like Live League, and you guys like
We
literally
had
fist
the
fighting on a trampoline. Yeah,
Yeah, or we had the whole like Kimbo Slice type thing going back then. I
yeah.
remember one of my buddies, a little bit after high school, had this apartment, and in his living room, we used to have fights there. So we would have like, I don't know, 50 or more people come. He had the bedroom, the living room. He had no furniture or anything. We were all broke, so there was blood all over the carpet and stuff. And we'd have like Friday night fights. I remember at one point we had a guy in the police academy in Denver that came, and he was a ref. And then they ended up, I think the video came out somewhere. I think Brandon Royval was there, like a lot of guys. There's a few guys that are cops now that were there but at the time, the guy that we had refing was in the academy. The video came out and they kicked him out of the police academy, and he never became a cop.
Was it illegal what you guys did? Like, did somebody get arrested or was an
No,
ambulance
no,
called? It was just a video went out online. That was
there
it.
was a video online, yeah. And then it was just like illegal fighting in a house and backyard. And
I
yeah,
mean, when you're looking at that, dude, it's pro wrestling. We were just pro wrestling.
yeah. I mean, fast forward, I won't say the guy's name, but at one point, so he kept training with us, and then he couldn't be a cop, so he became a parole officer. And then one of the guys that was out on parole was training with us at Brad Gumm's gym. Turns out he was training with us because the guy from our gym was his parole officer. So then they became friends. And then the guy I'm talking about cornered the felon in the fight. And then they fired him for being a parole officer too, for having too close a relationship. They're like, you can't be cornering your parolee for a fight.
Dude, sometimes when the universe speaks, you gotta listen.
Yeah, maybe find another career path.
Yeah, find another career, dude. This may have saved your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you may have just stayed out of that side of the prison bars.
Yeah, I still have a connection with him too, so I don't want to say his name.
No,
fucking
please don't.
Hilarious story.
Damon Daniels, it's your first fight. It goes down as a loss.
Yeah.
What do you remember about the first time stepping into the ring?
It's some like things you'll never forget, right? Like I said, it's the first one that's like planned. You're gonna train for, back then it was weeks, not months. And it was at heavyweight. Because I was like, I'm not cutting any weight, whatever. Brad was like, don't worry about cutting weight, just go in at what you weigh at. So I showed up to weigh-ins, and I remember the promoter was like, what do you weigh? I was like, I don't know, 203, 204. And he's like, you have to be 206 or more to fight. So then they brought me a bunch of water. They're like, start drinking water. And we're sitting waiting to get on the scale. So I'm chugging water so I can weigh enough. And the guy, Damon Daniels, right? Mm-hmm. I fought two Damons back to back.
Yeah,
Damon Daniels.
Yeah.
And shout out to him. I mean, I haven't talked to him in years, but I did. And he was active in the Army. So at one point, he emailed me from Iraq when my career kept going and just saying, like, happy to see you're doing so well, yada, yada. Yeah, big, like, jack dude. And I remember thinking, like, I felt like a kid because I was 18 and I think he was 30. And just thinking, like, man, what am I doing here? This guy's got muscles and everything. I'm just this 18-year-old kid trying to figure out life. But we had a great fight. Oddly enough, I got taken down quite a few times, even though I was just coming out of wrestling. But I was so concerned about just trying to hit him that I stopped thinking about defending takedowns.
And you took state in Colorado for wrestling, am I correct?
No. I mean, I wrestled and I did okay wrestling, but I was never good enough to be like a college wrestler. I didn't win state, any of those things. But yeah, so we had like just a brawl of a fight. I knocked out some of his teeth, and then he threw up in the ring, and then they scored the fight for him. Split decision win, he won. And then they had to pause the show because it was a canvas boxing ring, and he had puked everywhere before the decision. So this show got put on hold, and I remember just walking out and thinking, like, not letting this happen again. So I dedicated more of my time, because at the time I didn't stop like partying and doing all the dumb shit I was doing before that. I didn't take training. I trained every day, but I didn't. I kept living my regular life.
No discipline. You weren't as disciplined.
No discipline. Just like, oh yeah, as long as I'm training, I'll show up and do it. I think I do remember, which I'll never do again. I had a ton of friends come to that fight, and I was walking out of the ring, and people were handing me like Jaeger bombs and stuff, and I was like chugging them with gloves, everything on before I even had like a shirt on, going back. And I remember like being so sick to my stomach after, because like you just fought for 3 rounds, sweat, everything, dehydrated, and like doing shots with the crowd before I even got in the back. And it was a horrible idea.
Well, you said, learn life experiences and learning. So,
but that was like, so if I could say, that was a great like pivotal moment for my life, because that made me change everything. After that, losing that decision, I was like, I never want to do this again, but I loved it. Like I never want to be unprepared again, but I love the experience. So that was literally, I made like an entire 180 on my life. I stopped hanging out with like half the people I used to hang out with. I started being a homebody. I started training a couple times a day. Like I was hooked. And I really do feel like that was a turning point that like changed my life for the better for sure.
Yeah, they say you don't lose a fight, you learn from a fight.
Sometimes I kind of hate that saying.
Yeah.
I get it, but I also hate it. Like you don't lose, you learn. Like the fact is, like if you're competitive, you lose. You're a fucking loser. Not a loser in life, but you lost, right? You don't always learn. Not everybody learns from a loss either.
All right. Do you like to win more or do you hate to lose more?
I hate losing more than I like winning.
That's dude. That's a some of like the most highest level of people in the sport. That's no. I hate to lose. Like that is always their response.
Yeah, which means kind of the same thing if you think about it, because like I don't feel good about a draw either. So a draw is not losing or winning, but you put forth the effort. You do all these things, like we do everything to win, right? Um, yeah, I think anybody that's content with losing is not meant to be a competitor.
Yeah. All right. So what are you doing now? I mean, I know you're fighting for BKFC. Is that paying the bills or do you have another job?
Um,
Do you
yeah.
feel, do
So I mean,
you feel
I don't have to
comfortable
think.
talking about it?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, BKFC pays well, but yeah. I mean, I do commercial real estate now. I've always had other jobs or other businesses. I've owned my own businesses. Done a million different things. Even in the UFC when I was making great money, I've just always, I grew up. My mom was a single mom, three kids. Um, we never had much, so when I became an adult, I was like, I never want to go back to that. Not on her, nothing against her. She busted her ass. She worked two jobs. She worked days and nights.
You learn from it. Yeah, you learned. It's
Yeah,
just what do you want, what you don't want. Right. Yeah.
yeah, it gave us everything we could ever need. And yeah, so I've never felt good just throwing everything into one, like all the
Gotcha.
eggs in one basket. And with fighting, I always felt like, what if I blow my knee out? What if I do this? What if that happens? Then what do you do? Because I've had a lot of friends that were ranked in the world get a serious injury, they're on the shelf for a year or two. How do you pay bills?
No.
Yeah. So I've always tried to have like multiple sources of income. So yeah, even now, like leading up to weigh-ins of this last fight, I was working on my phone at weigh-ins. But I enjoy that. I think the busier my mind is, the less trouble I get into.
Let's speak about trouble. Your work Christmas party this last year. You guys were in Florida. And
Yeah,
you had an incident and you just started working there.
yeah. It wasn't a Christmas party, it was a work summit.
Oh,
So
okay. So all the big bosses were there.
everybody. And we have let's see, four different cities at least, so I work for a boutique brokerage here in Colorado, but we have Cleveland, Akron, Colorado Springs, Denver. It's my first time going there, meeting everybody, and story's a little embarrassing. first first night we go out, we're having drinks, everybody's getting to know each other before the summit starts the next day. And we're leaving a bar. This guy is standing there. Fort Lauderdale could be some trashy people anyway. There's a guy there holding a dog by its collar, so it's like hanging and like talking shit to people, which I don't care about that. I was like, hey, put that dog down, and he was like, fuck you. I was like, fuck me, put that dog down, or I'm gonna do that to you. And he said, fuck you again. So I kind of like flinched at him. And he took off running, so I ran him down and did it to him.
So you got other bosses. Chris
uh,
Camozzi, brand new employee. bare knuckle guy. He fought in the UFC, you know?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I turned around. I mean, so we're middle of the street, traffic. I'm on top of him, holding him by his neck. Wasn't fully choking him. I didn't hit him. And I was telling everybody, so I was like knee on belly, and I said, I would like everybody to notice that I'm not hitting him because he was screaming and kicking his feet. I was like, I'm not gonna hit him, but how do you like it? And yeah,
Dude, dogs and
I,
kids. Don't fuck with dogs. Don't fuck with kids. Everything else, you know, we can figure it out.
I'm with you. And I turn around. Whitney is a sound mind, and she's just like, "What are you doing? Like, stop! You know, like, let him go." And I turn around, and the entire company is outside the bar watching. So the next day, I had to show up to the summit, which is like classroom stuff. And even worse is they asked me if I knew any people that could be public speakers for the company in Florida, and I was like, "I've got the guy for you, Ian Heinisch."
Yeah.
So sitting in this classroom and embarrassed to see everybody just like, hey, how's it going? And everybody's like, heard about last night, like whatever. And they start the meeting off with like, hey, we have an amazing public speaker, one of Chris's friends, Ian Heinisch. And then he goes into a story about drug trafficking for the cartel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like people are looking back at me like,
yeah.
Who hired this?
Yeah, that's your second strike. Yeah.
I'm like, hey, what's up? Yeah, it was an interesting moment, but then I realized that, I really enjoy the company. So shout out to Hoff and Lee because they told me, like, the ones that were there that night, the guy who founded the company, who's like, in the 70s, came up and he was like, heard about last night, and I think it's awesome. Good. Fuck that guy.
Oh, that's it. That's it. I love you. I mean, yes.
I was like, this might be my company.
Right. Yeah. And Heinisch, we did an interview with him. Lytle, like at the time, this is like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Lytle's like, yeah, I don't really know who the guy is. So I'm at like a sports convention and I hear like street Spanish. And that's what I speak. Like I never took a class. I speak fluent, like literal cartel type street Spanish. And I'm like, wait a minute, dude. I start talking to him. I'm like, you never took a class for Spanish. He's like, nah, dude, I was in prison for a few years.
He's like blonde hair, white dude.
yeah. He's like, I was in prison for a few years in like Colombia and Spain. I'm like, what? Yeah. It's amazing the UFC like never marketed his story.
I know. And I would like to preface, for people watching this interview that don't know Ian, I said that, he gotten in trouble for that, but he did turn his life entirely around. So his story is very like motivational because he's completely sober, which he had a drug and alcohol problem, very religious now, and completely changed his life. So
phenomenal.
If you're story. If you're just tuning into this, it's not like, I would like to preface it with that, at least like that's why it's a cool story.
It's a win. Yeah, it's a win. It's a guy that, there's levels of getting into trouble, and then there's Ian Heinisch's story.
And he's younger than me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Locked Up Abroad was trying to do a show on him. Like, what was that? The Discovery Channel.
Uh-huh.
I think. What's the talent agency? In California, not CYA. WME. Maybe it was IMG.
Okay.
They wanted to make a movie on his life. They told him that like Channing Tatum would play him, all these things, and then he turned it down. But cool story.
He turned it down?
Yeah, because it doesn't pay that much, right? But if you come out with a book first and then a movie, you get bought. Like he's not dumb.
Yeah, he's a big crypto guy.
Yeah, but they also try to, companies like that will throw you money and be like, "Hey, we'll pay you 10 grand for the rights to your story." 10 grand or like, yeah.
Yeah, Heinisch just actually doing really well for himself.
He's doing great. He actually, I don't want to speak for him, but as far as I know, he asked to be released by the UFC, which is crazy. and he
Well,
doesn't plan on fighting anymore.
the thing with it was he's compliant with USADA. His body's worn down. He needs like to recover, and sometimes there's things that you need to put in your body to help you recover that would get you violated by USADA.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know much about that for him, and I don't want to speak on it, but I mean, I do know that he had a lot of lingering injuries and stuff. I mean, when you're locked up in prison for years and years, fighting for your life, there's a lot of shit that happens. So every fight for him, there was issues where just injuries, you know. So I talked to him maybe 3 or 4 days ago, and I was like, "What do you think? Are you gonna fight again?" He's like, "I don't know yet. I just gotta wait and see." But he's making great money right now. He's making probably more money not fighting than he was fighting, and he's happy and healthy in life. So we'll see.
He's got a good life. That's it. That's all you can ask
Yeah,
for. State champion wrestler out of Colorado too.
couple times I think.
Yeah, 2 time.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I don't know. He definitely could have gone to college and wrestled if he wanted to. He's very good. I mean, you even saw him in the UFC. You know, that was his thing. That dude can scramble like no other. He can wrestle like no other. And then I know that he ended up doing. He's got some old like paper clips of it wrestling in prison. It was sand wrestling in like Africa or something. He would show up like handcuffed and everything, but they let him compete.
That's freaking wild.
Wildlife.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it really is. And like the one thing with Ian, it's like, all right, Ian, you do all this crazy stuff. You sit for a little bit in Colombia, then you get deported to Spain, where you do the rest of your sentence, and then brought here to possibly face another trial. And then, like, on this date, which is a few months later, you get your hand raised in your first win.
You
How
skipped a big part of that.
you get your first win, and it's just like, how much of a relief was that? Like, we finally, like, God, I'm finally where I'm supposed to be. And his response is, no, not really. I just wanted to keep fighting again. Like, I'm like, holy shit. Like, most people this would be their moment, where he was just like, yeah, who gives a shit?
Yeah. No, I mean the other part of it is like I mean I won't tell this whole story because I'll probably mess it up, but he got released in Spain, I think. And he was like, man, I thought I was clean and clear, everything. He's like, they drove me handcuffed to the airport, put me on a plane, handed me my passport. And he was like, man, I was having the best time of my life on the plane on the way home. He landed at JFK. The U.S. Marshals were waiting for him. So he went to Rikers. He was locked up in Rikers for a bit. And you can only imagine as a blonde-haired white dude going to Rikers. Um, he said all he remembers is on the way there that one of the guards was like, you must have fucked up bad, white boy, because I don't know why we're taking you here, but you're in for a rude awakening. And he said that he would rather do years overseas than like a month in Rikers. So then he got out of Rikers, and that's when he came to Factory X training with us. I met him right when he got out of prison and came back to Denver. And he was just a wrestler then. So he would always get guillotined. We would all guillotine him or rear naked choke him. Because he'd always, put his hands down on the mat, like wrestling, like scrambling, getting choked. But then he learned real quick.
Was he all PTSD'd out? Like, was he like institutionalized in the beginning?
No. I mean, you're in a fight gym, so it's like how
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
you overly aggressive? I don't know. You just fit in with the rest of them.
Wow. So 5 months later, Damon Clark, you win by KO. 1 month later, less than a month. What is it? July. Nope. Sorry about that. Yeah, a couple months later, you got Gary Borum. You go to the Rocky Mountain Bad Boys, Joe Cerna. Like, you're consistently kind of finding your groove with fighting.
Yeah.
Did you know right away this is something that you had planned on doing as a career?
Honestly, after the first fight that I lost, and then I said that I changed everything. So I quit my job, started working nights so that I could train twice a day. So I would get up I would work all night, get up at, I don't know, 6 in the morning, go train at 7, go home for a bit, sleep a little bit more, go back in the afternoon, train again, then go to work at 6. Um, yeah, so I would say at that point I was definitely hooked, and then that's what I wanted to do. Did I know that it would like become a career? No, but I didn't have anything else better going on, so it it fit, and I'm super thankful for it, man. It changed my entire life. I can't even imagine what I would be doing now if I didn't start fighting. I feel like I would be probably locked up.
You were definitely a wild one like that. You like to put your foot on the gas pedal. That's
Yeah.
for sure. That's for sure. Um, Spencer Hooker, you win a split decision against him. So when you look at it, you're about a year into your fight career, Kickdown Classic, May 12th, 2007. When you see a split decision against Spencer Hooker, it means, all right, you hit a plateau. You're either going to level off or find another gear. That's another hard thing, is when you're like questioning yourself before a decision gets read.
Yeah. I think I don't know, I think that might be incorrect. I don't know if that was a split decision. I remember dominating that guy. And at the time he was kind of like the main guy locally here in Colorado. At least for the level I was on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure I think I TKO'd him. I don't know. I don't believe it was a split though.
Okay.
But at one point after that, like I had all the like back then there was probably 6 or 7 promotions in Colorado, and I became the champion of all of them at the same time. Which I still got to get my belts back. So Mark has him at Factory X. I let him hang him in the gym, even though he wasn't my coach at the time, and still working on getting those back. But I mean,
Really?
I think they're cool to have, just for. Do I care about them? No, but like having them for later in life is just like something to look at. Cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
still working on getting those back. Hopefully soon.
It's very telling. Very telling.
Yeah.
Um, Gustavo Machado was the main event when he fought on Premier Fighting Championship against Tony Barker. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Gustavo?
Oh, come on, dude. Legend.
Yeah, that's an old one. So I was supposed to fight him next, and then I don't know if he wasn't able to come back or what. But great dude. I took him out. I put him up while he's in town. Yeah, because Babalu was his coach at the time. So Babalu came out, and since he used to train with Brad, they would come to our gym. And
Yeah. Machado's legit. I mean, obviously, in an Elite Fighting Championship, Donnie Liles, he's out of Rough House. He was on the
Donnie
IFL Chicago.
Liles, yeah,
Yeah,
Donnie Liles. I can't remember if he was in the UFC or not, but he fought in the IFL back then.
against Rodrigo Ruas.
Yeah, so Donnie was kind of my first
Real
bigger
test.
step up,
Yeah.
where I was like, all right, I've seen this guy on TV, everything. And I think I fought 2 weeks before that or something. I fought Tony Barker.
October 26th and then November 10th. Yeah, a couple weeks.
Yeah. And I remember there were 2 different promoters. But back then it wasn't as like nobody was trying to sign you to deals. So the promoter for the Donnie Lyles fight was like, offered me this fight. And they were like, yeah, but you already have a fight booked. And I was like, that's fine, I'll do both. And they were like, well, what if you get knocked out? Then we're out a main event. And I was like, well, I won't get knocked out. How about that? And
Thomas.
yeah,
The pinky swear.
yeah, we had some stipulations in there. I think that I don't know. I might have had to owe them money if it didn't happen, but back then, even now, it's like always bet on yourself. I was like, I'll be there. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, Danny Lyles, he was in the IFL Chicago team, and he had a win over Marco Huaz's kid. So
Oh yeah,
he was
man.
a tough dude.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what ever happened to him either, but that was a good one for me. I think I beat him with a body shot.
Shortly thereafter, you fly up to Canada. Mark Pavelich is the promoter. Kind of a controversial guy. Either you love him or you got some interesting things to say about him.
Yeah, eyeliner on a man is always a little controversial, but it so that's a funny one. So literally, I think it was 3 days ago. So I fought Jesse Forbes,
Yes.
right?
Tough as hell, Jesse Forbes.
Yeah, that was the hardest. I think that was probably still the hardest I've ever been hit. I just watched it. So he sent it to me. He was like, hey, I don't know if you saw this. Because I've kept in contact with Jesse. We became on the same team after that fight. MTX Audio. I don't know if you remember that company.
I got it coming up.
Yeah, okay. Anyways, I've kept in touch with Jesse. I had lunch with him last year when I was in Arizona. That's how I know Bader and all those guys. We're all on the same team. But Jesse just sent it to me, I think 3 days ago. He's like, dude, I have not seen this fight in forever. And he's like, I found it because my son wanted to see some of my old fights. So I Googled it and it popped up. And he's like, now my son's talking shit to me about how you were beating my ass. But he sent it to me. So it's on YouTube now. But he did beat me.
Yeah, he beat you by armbar. How was Mark Pavelich?
Oh, I mean, he was a pain in the ass to deal with. He's just, I mean, he gave me an opportunity. So what can I say? He just always had like the little kind of cheese ball mentality to him. You know, it was a little different. I think they had me down as missing weight for that fight too, which I didn't. They had a scale that they were kicking around on the ground. They tried putting it on like a waitress tray upside down at the bar. So it was like flexing, all these weird things where I was like, where's the real scale? I ended up making it, but when I rewatched the video, they said that I missed weight, which I didn't because I didn't get fined.
Okay.
And yeah, it was an interesting time. You know, it was way different back then. There wasn't much for commissions and stuff. They were just like, "Do you agree? Do you agree? All right, let's do it."
So Jesse Forbes was bloody from an opening exchange, and I think the one thing that stands out in his record is he's got to win over Anthony Smith.
Yeah, yeah. So Jesse and I going back to HDNet fights. You remember that?
We got
that fight was bloodiest fight of '08, which is where I first met Boss. And just a cool time, man. Fast forward, what's his name? Is it Jason Genet? Fought for MFC. He was Sawyer's head coach.
Oh, really?
So I think it's Genet. So I remember because I was supposed to fight him, and I didn't catch it at first. Talked to him at weigh-ins fight night. I was like, man, I knew I recognized your name, and he was like, yeah, we were in MFC back in the day together, and we were supposed to fight each other. So like, such a weird world.
Yeah, you fought Dwayne Lewis as well out in Canada. D-Bomb, he's got wins over David Lusau and Marvin Eastman. Like, you fought straight killers on the independent grind, bro.
I tried to. I never wanted to have like easy ones. I wanted to fight like who was gonna like build your name and like put you up. Some of them never went on to do a lot, but Dwayne Lewis was definitely a guy that was probably hitting the sauce quite a bit because he was. I don't know. You can find some fights of him online. He's a pretty big dude.
Yeah.
Between the fight I saw him and then when I agreed to fight him, I was like, "What the hell? Like, who is that guy?" He had like muscles coming out of his neck and like a bodybuilder.
I'd say the Premier Fighting Championship, Nick Rosenborough, the Slim Shady of MMA, and one of Jeremy Horn's students.
Yeah,
tough 7 contestant.
He went on to do pretty well.
Yeah, he did real well. You were
he
also
went up to heavyweight.
Yeah, you were sponsored by War MMA at that time too.
Oh yeah, forgot about them. They made me my own T-shirt and everything.
Yeah, you donated your entire purse to a child with cancer, Tyler Singer.
Yeah, not a child. He was one of my still is. Sorry, not one of my best friends. Like went to high school together. Everything. Good dude. Still around.
So you lost by triangle. It's like anytime you do something, you go out of your way to do something incredibly kind for someone. It seems like you're on the the shaft end of a stick.
Yeah, maybe it's the distractions. Maybe it's too much shit going on and worrying about all these other things.
Elliot Duff, you beat him. LG Sports Management signs you, and you're on the MTX Car Audio sponsored fighter list.
Yeah.
Did they just kind of give you like a monthly stipend, or did they have you live with a group of other people?
No, it was mostly a monthly stipend. So MTX Audio, which was the team Forbes was on when I fought him. After that, his manager reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we're signing more guys, yada yada yada." Or maybe Jesse put me in touch with him. But back then, that was Jamie Varner, Ryan Bader, Efren Escudero, CB Dollaway, Forbes, me.
Santino DeFranco, Aaron Simpson. Yeah.
Yeah.
Efrain
Sadie
Escudero.
Martinez. It was a back then you would see MTX Audio team on everything, WEC, UFC, everything. And it was a really cool deal for me because I wasn't even in any big shows. So I got a monthly check just to basically help train, live, everything. And then I was still working at the time. So it definitely helped, I mean, back then they were paying me probably more than guys are making now, like a month. The money was good.
Why did they get out of the sport?
Probably no return on the investment. I don't know. I mean, it was great for branding and stuff, but I also, the guy who owned MTX, his name was Lloyd Ivy, who also owned the Tilted Kilt. So Lloyd, God, back then was probably mid 70s, early 80s. So maybe that's why it all went away. But I feel like the branding for them was great because they were on TV all week, every week. Because back then, Versus, WEC was always playing. They had commercials, everything. It was a big company. It was great. I mean, they would send us gifts, and you get a whole sound system, subs, amp, speaker, everything, Christmas. It was cool.
Oh, for sure, dude. They even did like a couple fight nights. Victor Moreno, who is another legend of the game, another 50 Fight Club member. You got to win over him.
Yeah, that was a cool event too. So I think it was my first time fighting in Vegas. Um, MTX put on, they called it MTX Fight Night. So it's basically all of their high ups, people in the company, everything. It was a private show in Vegas for their like summit, their company summit, where people got choked and everything, but not in the street.
Right.
And it was cool because then they had like a whole after party for us, all this stuff. But it was fun. It was a really fun time back then, actually. Now that we're talking about this, I haven't talked about this with anybody in a really long time.
With the podcast, dude, like the independent grind is kind of like where we cut our teeth. And it's unfortunate that a lot of people just don't have the ability to, especially the people that are like talking heads. It's something that they know nothing about. And it's what makes you. It's what makes the fighter. Like this is who you are. This is your roots.
Yeah, well, and you're such a like aficionado on the sport. So you recognize some of these names, like you say, Victor Moreno. I feel like nobody else probably knows that. But back then, yeah, he had a ton of fights. He had been everywhere.
He's got 80 fights. If you've never been to a live event with like Jeremy Horn, Shannon Rich, Travis Fulton, Victor Moreno, Jonathan Ivey, if you've never seen one of those guys fight live, are you really an MMA fan?
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy because I haven't heard some of those names in so long.
I mean, you got 1,000 events right there between those names. You weren't at one of them, probably not a fight fan. Your manager, he splits from Arizona Combat Sports in February of 2009. There was a lot of drama in regards to it. You had people kind of trying to pull you in each direction. How would you describe that situation?
For me, the situation wasn't that weird, right? Because all of the other guys I named that were on the MTX team were part of Arizona Combat Sports. I think I was the only outside one. So for me, my only loyalty was to the manager, Jason Genet, who brought me in. And I don't know all the intermixings of what happened with them or the split and everything, but I was like, look, man, I'm with you. And regardless of any drama, I would say that he went on to be my manager till by 2020.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he managed after that. he went from having like a really large team to, and I prefer it this way, to small. So it was like me, Brendan Schaub, Shane Carwin. He branched off into Colorado a bit, even though he lived in Arizona, and always did good by me for the most part. And then it came time to switch it up and change things up. But during 2020, my entire life kind of changed, just like everybody else's. During COVID,
Yeah.
I shut down my retail store, got divorced, all these things like right as COVID hit. So part of me was just like, let's clean house and start again.
Yeah. Close that chapter. Did you ever work out with Jamie Varner?
Oh yeah, Varner was on the team too. I did, but I can't say I did, right? Like he was what, 155? Same room and everything. I can't remember if I ever trained with him.
Okay.
But I think Joe Riggs was even part of that team back then. Because I remember when I fought Joe Riggs in the UFC back in the day before I was ever in the UFC, I would go to Arizona Combat Sports for training, and Riggs was there. And I just remember being like, man, oh yeah, Condit was on the team. I was like, that's Carlos Condit and Joe Riggs, like sparring each other. It's crazy. And I loved it because I was like a nobody. Then fast forward to, I don't know, 5, 6 years, maybe more later, then I'm fighting Joe Riggs.
Right. When we asked Jamie Varner, the split happens, CB, Ryan Bader go their way, and then like you kind of stay where you're at. Why didn't you go with them? And it was just like, yeah, they never asked me. And it was like the kid that never got picked. And I was like, oh fuck, that hurt.
What's crazy is Bader, so I still talk to Bader too. I was just with him at Dan Henderson's golf tournament before I fought Sawyer. Great dude. Him and his wife are awesome. And him and I were talking about hunting here in December.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, King of Champions title fight, Jesse Taylor. Jesse Taylor, dude. He's an interesting guy.
Yeah, there's some funny ones behind that thing too. He interesting guy for sure. So they brought him out here to fight me. That was right when he got kicked off the Ultimate Fighter. So he was in the finals. Anybody that was a fan of the Ultimate Fighter saw that thing. He kicked the limo window out, was going nuts in Vegas. So Dana booted him when all he had to do was go home and show up on the finale, win the show. I think it was Amir Sadolov that won the show after that, right? But Jesse, I'm sure, would have beaten him because Amir back then didn't know how to wrestle or anything. So that happens, and then I think I'm his next fight, or maybe he had been fighting around a bit. But as far as I remember, it was pretty close to then. But for me, I was like, man, I wasn't on the Ultimate Fighter or any of that. You're getting this guy that's out of the UFC to fight me again, which is always the goal, Guys coming up, you want to find those guys coming out of the UFC and fight them because, like, the UFC will notice that. You got to get wins over these guys, like that.
Yeah.
So I was supposed to fight him for 5 rounds in Colorado, and he got to town, and I guess the altitude affected him a bit. So they called the promoter, and they said, hey, we're here. We're only fighting 3 rounds. Promoter called me, was like, hey, they said 3 rounds. We'd already signed contracts. And we're like, what? It's 5 rounds. It's a title fight. So they said 3 rounds or he's going home and not fighting. So I was like, fuck it, I'll beat him in 3.
Right. A seasoned promoter would have said, yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about the contracts. And then just completely ignored it. Just as soon as at that 3rd round, start the timer. You got 1 minute, dude. That's what a Matt Lindland would have done. So
yeah. So I agreed to 3.
Oh.
We fought the 3. I almost applauded him. It was I don't think that video exists either, which I remember a reporter from MMA Weekly telling me that would have been the first omoplata he had seen in like 10 years or something at the time that happened, because I had it like fully locked in and everything, and then Jesse was able to get out of it, and he ended up beating me on a decision. He threw up everywhere too after 3 rounds. Yeah. So I was like, man, I should have kept it at 5, huh? But whatever. Everything happens for a reason.
So Jesse goes on to his second season of The Ultimate Fighter and gets kicked off a second time.
Did he? I forget that now. I
He's
know he was on with
never
like
he's
James Krause, right?
yeah, he's never lost on The Ultimate Fighter. And he's been kicked off twice. And I've supposed to have interviewed him at least 3 times, and it's just a text. Yeah, I'm almost ready. Almost ready. All right, dude, it's been 45 minutes. I've been staring at my computer. Yeah. 10 more minutes. 10 more minutes. He's done it to me 3 times.
He might not know how to work the computer. I don't know.
I don't know, dude. Interesting guy. Interesting guy. So Jason Genet, the Magnetic Marketing, started working with you in 2009. Prior to this, that he was at the LG management?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Changed names a few times.
Yeah. You also fought for Victory Fighting Championships, another legendary person of the sport. NitroTickets.com is his new company, Victory J.
Yeah. I still talk to him every once in a while.
Me too. Yeah.
That's also another one of those belts I want back that's at Factory X being held hostage, because Victory back in the day was like that was a big promotion. I mean,
Dude.
Anthony Smith and I were supposed to fight back then. There was a ton of guys that came out of Victory.
Drew Dober.
Yeah. I first met Drew back then. God, who else? Ellenberger came out of there.
That whole Nebraska.
Houston Alexander, I think.
Yep.
The whole Midwest. Victory was because here in Colorado it's Ring of Fire.
It was
Ring of Fire
Bean.
and
Yeah,
Victory.
that's Sven Bean. Yeah.
Yeah, who runs LFA now.
Yeah. You didn't fight for him much. In fact, I don't think you ever fought for him.
Never. And I'm friends with Sven. I was just with him at a poker tournament a couple months ago. Just never worked out. He had offered me fights, and then it'd always fall through.
Yeah, you, Darren Brudigan, you win by triangle. Jamie Gordon is the promoter. Chad Rudigan. Go ahead.
Rudigan was Victory.
Yes, yeah, that was in Victory. And then the King of Champions, I apologize, Chad Rainier. You win by Anaconda. He's a UFC vet, so now you're getting a UFC vet. Like, you got to be on their radar at this point.
So that one, yeah, Chad Reiner. So rewind. So I was supposed to be, I auditioned for The Ultimate Fighter 7 when Jesse was on there. Taylor. I was the alternate for that season. So they called me. They're like, hey, we would like you to be the alternate for the show. Like, basically, you almost made it.
What do you think? Why did you not get picked in your head? You've had to have had this thought.
I wasn't outspoken enough. That was my first time going for a reality show TV. I went in there just normal and
cookie cutter, huh? Okay.
Yeah. So I changed that on the season 11. I was like, I got this down. I know exactly what I need to do. Go in there like an asshole.
Right.
And I'll get to that. But so I was the Ultimate Fighter season 7 alternate. So basically they flew me back out to Vegas. Well, the fights to get into the house were going. I had to be on weight for an entire day waiting during weigh-ins just to make sure. So if somebody missed weight or whatever, I'd be in. It's like the one season back then that nobody missed weight, nothing happened.
Did they pay
nobody
you?
Pulled out.
Did they pay you?
I can't remember. I think maybe, but I was only there for like a week.
Okay.
And at the time, I just wanted the opportunity.
Yeah.
And where was I going with that? Who was the fight we were talking about just a minute ago?
Okay, so Chad Rainier. Oh, Brudy.
Oh, Chad Reiner. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if you remember Chad Reiner. So that was another, like, for me, step up. He was coming out of the UFC.
I saw him fight in Iowa a couple times.
I think Anthony Johnson knocked him out, and then they cut him.
Yeah.
So I beat Chad Reiner, and then I don't know, it was a day or two later, the Ultimate Fighter contacted me. So I didn't send in an application or anything.
So this is for the Ultimate Fighter season 11.
11, yeah. So producer hit me up and he was like, hey, you still want to be on the Ultimate Fighter? And I was like, yeah, I do. He's like, how's your career going? So I sent him the video. I was like, oh, I just fought a couple days ago, beat Chad Reinder. And he was like, all right, hold that thought. Called me back and he was like, hey, listen, you already made it through all the process before. We liked you. You didn't make it on. We want you on this season. You don't need to audition. You don't need to try out. Just come to Vegas for the interviews. So then I was like, all right, I know what to do now. Oh man, I had a great time in Vegas. My interview was booked for like, I don't know, call it 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I think I showed up at like 2:15. Um, I showed up double fisting drinks because I was out like partying with the other guys. It was like me, Seth Baczynski, a bunch of other guys. Threw them on the table and I was like, what is it you guys need to know now? I probably gave an amazing interview because they were dying laughing. And they're like, all right, you're good. Get the fuck out of here. And I was like, nah, actually, I'm not ready to leave. You know, you guys have made me wait years. So, and I just kept going and I just rattling shit off. I started talking shit about everybody that was in line in the hallway behind me because I saw all the guys before going in. And then when I walked,
can you imagine just the cloud of alcohol smell? You
oh,
know?
it was rough. I might have even like kicked the door in because I was like, "This." I watched the show, you know, a few more seasons. Here's what they want. They want some
They like
fucking
this.
jackass. So I remember walking out the door, and like, you know, there's a line of guys, and going down the line, I was like, "Oh, you guys are fucked. I just ripped you apart." I think Seth Baczynski, who was one of my friends, was like 2 after me. And I was like, Seth, you included. And the guy right after me, later I saw him. He's like, dude, I don't know what you said. He's like, they didn't even give me the time of fucking day. It was pretty brutal. I was making fun of all of them because I looked at their like everybody that I knew was out there interviewing. I was like writing down names and then Googling at night and just finding things to say. And unfortunately, you have to be a total jackass to be on reality TV for the most part.
It's what you do when you're there. And you know, like Victor O'Donnell, you win by decision in the Ultimate Fighter elimination. It's January 10th, 2010. You couldn't continue. You said, you know, my jaw hurts a little bit. You'd like to get it checked out. And Dana White throws a shot at you saying, you know, it's a toothache. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. It wasn't him, it was the doctors.
Okay. I thought it was Dana that said it. Okay. Did that bother you at all? Like watching that at home, knowing like, dude, my jaw was broke.
No, fuck, I'd have to watch the show again. But as far as I remember, kind of what happened was Victor O'Donnell and I had like a crazy fight to get in the house. I broke his orbital, so he like left on a stretcher. I won, wasn't feeling right, but also pumped, like made it on, like this is your dream. And I was the second to last fight to get into the house. So after that, we all got to go to the house. Court McGee and Seth Baczynski were the one after me. So by that time, they're like, all right, everybody get in the van. If you're going to the house, you go this way. If you're off the show, thanks for coming, go that way. So I'm just pumped to be in this group going to the house. Like I'm on the show, I made it. But I knew like when we pulled up to the house, everybody gets out, you know, the reality TV style runs to find their room. And I just kind of like hobble out of the van, feeling kind of like shit. And find my room. I end up rooming with Court. And my side of the house, I was the only guy on Ortiz's team that was on like the Liddell side of the house. Everybody else took off running, got the best rooms. I was like, I'm just happy to be here. So the next day we go right into training. We pick teams, we go into training, and I keep training. And then when we're sparring and stuff like that, every time I get hit, I'm like, fuck, like I keep having to take a second. And they're like, what's wrong? What's wrong? I'm like, nothing, you know, try to keep going. And then one of the producers was like, hey, come here. Like, what's up? And I was like, oh, nothing. I just, you know, I got some mouth pain. So like, oh, we're going to take you to the dentist. They take me to a dentist. And back then, I don't know that they used the best doctors. So go to the dentist. The dentist goes, oh, you got a broken tooth. We'll pull it. No problem. I'm like, cool, do whatever you need to do, get it out so I can keep doing this. So go home. The next day is my dentist appointment. I'm in the dentist in the chair. They're getting ready to pull my teeth. Apparently, I think it was a broken tooth or two broken teeth. I don't remember the exact details, but getting ready. I'm literally in the chair. Dr. Davidson, shout out to him, the UFC doctor, comes in, shows up, comes in, and he was like, stop what you're doing. Because he reviews everything for the UFC. Even worldwide, Dr. Davidson looks at everything. He is like the head for them. So everything goes through him. And he showed up in person, everything walks in, puts the X-ray on the screen, and he was like, he doesn't have any broken teeth. His teeth are fine. His jaw is broken right here. And I had a fracture on my jaw, but this dentist was about to pull my teeth. So Dr. Davidson talks to me and he goes, do you know how bad it would have hurt to have them pull out two of your back like molars that are healthy teeth? He's like, I'm sorry to tell you, but your jaw is fractured. It's not your teeth. Now, I don't know if that dentist was just like, I'll get some money out of the UFC. I'm going to do this. But literally stopped it right before they're about to start. And before that, not to throw everybody off, it was kind of funny. This is Tito and I were on the same page because Tito was my coach. We figured I would be the first fight because I was the most banged up. So Chuck's team had first pick of who was going to fight. So Tito talked to me after one or two practices. He's like, listen, I want you to be ready. They're most likely going to pick you. You had the hardest fight to get in here. You're the most injured, banged up. They're going to try to take you out. So I was like, cool, I'm ready. He's like, your mouth, we'll get it taken care of. He's like, I know a guy here in Vegas. He'll come. If they pick you, he'll show up in the locker room. We'll give you a shot of Novocaine. So Tito had some guy that was going to show up and give me a Novocaine shot.
Oh my God, dude.
He's like, you won't feel shit. These are all funny now to talk about it because it's hilarious. Even back then, I was like, fuck it. Yeah, give me the Novocaine. If I don't feel it, fine.
This is a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, Dr. Davidson stopped them from pulling my teeth out. My teeth are still in there. They're still good. Yeah, and then on the show, when you see Dana walk in and announce that I was off, I didn't know. I didn't know that I was getting kicked off the show, any of that. They told me it was a fracture, so I was like, all right, what does that matter? Fuck it. I could use my mouth. It wasn't like the mechanism of my jaw was broken. So they didn't tell me anything else. And then it was like, Dana has a special announcement once I got back to the training center. So yeah, got sent home.
So do you go home, or do you go to like the eliminated fighters' house?
No, home. So I quit my job and everything before leaving. I was like, I told everybody, you're not allowed to tell them that you're on the show. So you tell them something, you'll be gone, yada, yada. And then I see people like a week later and they're like, hey, you're leaving.
What had happened
I quit my job.
Yeah, what had happened was, yeah.
Come back and I was like, oh yeah, no, I didn't end up going on that trip. I had to like lie about it forever.
Oh, fuck. Like you've got strong character. Like you do. Like you're a big draw in Colorado. Well, you got strong character. Like you've got good people's skills and connections. So when you say something, yeah, I'm going away for a while, then you're there like, about a week later. Like, what the fuck? Like what? You know what I mean?
Yeah. At the time I was the champion for Victory too. So I went to the next show and was cornered teammates, and that's when Anthony Smith was trying to fight me. And I told them basically like, I'm out, I'm probably done at Victory. I've got some things going on, yada yada. But then I show up to corner teammates at the next one and they're like, what are you doing here? I thought you couldn't fight. And I was like, well, kinda. I ended up telling Jay.
Yeah, maybe.
I think I ended up telling Jay, like, hey, here's the deal. Like, I was on the Ultimate Fighter. Here's what happened. I explained it to him, and like that's why I couldn't do it. That way he didn't think that I was just like ducking and dodging.
Yeah. So that is Chris Camozzis before the UFC story.
Yeah.
Goes on to about, what, 19, 20 fights in the UFC after 20, if you include the Ultimate Fighter. 20 fights?
Yeah, I counted. I got my jaw broken. So when they say 19, I'm like, it was 20, motherfucker.
20. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, you had 20 fights in the UFC, which is a legendary career. I mean, you were in there right at the time when they started doing lots of shows, nowhere near as many as that they're doing right now. But
Yeah.
yeah, you also, I mean, one of my little side questions that I got for you. You used to bounce at, was it Diamond Cabaret?
Yeah.
And the manager killed somebody.
Yeah. Everybody thought it was me. And I was like,
Yeah, I thought it
no,
was
that
you
was
too, dude. I thought it was you.
yeah, because he choked him. I was yeah. They wild time. He went to prison for manslaughter.
Do
The
you
guy
remember?
that he
Go ahead.
what were you gonna say?
I mean, go ahead. The guy that he, go ahead.
Yeah, the guy that he choked. So my manager, not to sound terrible in this, but thank God he was Asian. Because the manager, the guy he choked, was the chief of a Native American tribe in town for a convention. So you can only imagine, like, thank God that wasn't, what's the
Like,
best way to put it? Thank God it wasn't me, like, white guy,
yeah,
American guy, everything.
murders Indian. Yeah.
But the guy did have drugs in his system, was drunk, was there partying, was there belligerent. And my manager grabbed him from behind, but also didn't know any better. My manager didn't train, so he was squeezing as hard as he could, but it was like a melee fight. There was a ton of guys fighting. The guy ended up dying. He had like a heart attack. And then the following week, one of the guys that worked with me got stabbed. So I was like, I don't make enough for this shit. Like to deal with like potentially going to prison for doing your job, um, so he
Crazy
kind of run his
hours.
course.
Yeah, crazy hours. It's not worth
The,
it.
the hours were fine. The job taught me a ton. I think I learned more about business from that job because you're just hustling. Like you make tips, right? So the better you are at hustling, the more money you make.
Wow. Dude, you had a real interesting life, man. Like you really have. And I think because it's you, you're not kind of looking at it the way everybody else does, but every little like step of your life is just, it's an interesting story. It really is,
Yeah.
man.
Oh yeah, I could write a book, but there's half the shit I don't want to say on the podcast or in a book.
Yeah.
We can talk about that another time.
Yeah. Chris Camozzi, I'll see you at I'll see you at the next BKFC that we're in Colorado. I don't know. Are you traveling at all with them? Are you coming out to the Miami show?
You tell them to bring me, man. I'm in.
That's cool. You know what, dude? That wouldn't be a bad idea.
Let me know.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a bad idea.
I've been waiting for them to call, like, so I can fun to come be a spectator and just do some fan stuff.
Yeah, it's something you're good at too. Chris, I've taken up a shitload of your time. You promised me an hour. We obviously are way longer than that. I appreciate it, man, and we will absolutely be in touch. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.